Welcome to the Kyson Kid podcast, where we talk about everything that matters. We're talking about truth and love and self-love and compassion, relationships, how to grow, how to change, and how to enjoy the journey. What's up? Welcome to the podcast. This is big episode 1. I'm excited. I'm planning to share some of my story so you can get a feel for how I think, the way I work through things, what I've been through, and overall just get a feel for if you're going to enjoy this podcast and kind of like the tone of the podcast, right? And I'll share more parts of my story later. Feel free to ask more questions if you want details. You can always get in touch with me on Facebook or social media or whatever. But today I wanted to share about kind of the overall journey I've had with life. And for me, a lot of that journey is focused on struggling with pornography. I was 9 years old, I think. It's hard to remember exactly, 8 or 9. And I had seen a commercial on Cartoon Network that was you can play games online. It was like a Powerpuff Girls game. And if you don't know what that is, that's it's just an innocent little cartoon game, right? So I go into my dad's office and I type it in, hit enter, and I must have made a typo of some kind because the page that loaded was not Cartoon Network. It was, a naked woman. And as it was loading, I was like, I don't know what I'm looking at. What is this? And so, I called my friend in and I was like, dude, check this out. We kind of laughed about it and then went on to play games. And, I didn't dive right into porn at that point, but it was enough to plant the seed. And I remember thinking pretty often about it. What else is out there? What else can you search? What else can you look up? And as time went on, I started to find things on TV. I discovered masturbation on my own without anyone telling me about it. Still at a really young age, I, started to get online and just find things. And for me, it started to become a problem. It was something I was thinking about a lot. And some of it was natural curiosity. Some of it was the rush of, sneaking around or whatever. And kind of got sucked in. And I could tell it was not doing good things for me. It didn't bring light into my life. It was pretty dark. And the whole time trying to stop, knowing I don't actually want this, but I kept getting sucked in. And in my church, the one of the big goals was I'm going to go serve a mission for my church when I turn 19. There's a lot of church duties in between that, which we can talk about that later. It's pretty intense to navigate pornography as an addiction or a compulsive habit, along with doing church. I felt like I had to hide everything, so much. I had to hide so much. And at the same time, I could have gotten support, but I chose to feel unsafe. I didn't feel safe to. And so I just wrote it out alone. And I remember just even imagining telling anyone, my parents or a church leader, about my porn addiction or my porn habit just made me sick physically, sick to my stomach. Could not imagine it. And around 17, I believe, on one fateful night, my dad caught me looking at porn. That was pretty crazy. It was super embarrassing and I hated it. And also there's a part of me that was just oh, I'm so grateful now to have this off my chest. I don't have to carry this alone. And so from there, got ready for, I kind of cleaned up things and abstained from porn. I really just kind of stopped. There was a lot of shame there. Now that it was out in the open, it was pretty hard to go back. And so stopped looking at porn, got ready for a mission, went and served a 2-year mission for my church. And I honestly had a great time. I kind of just hoped my pornography issue is done. I remember seeing porn on my mission once and it just shocked my heart. I was I'm so scared of how much I wanted to see that or whatever. And after I got back, I fell right back in. Then I cleaned up for a year and was no, I can do this. And I got to a whole year of abstaining, which seemed so good. I fixed it, it's solved. But then again, like later broke up with a girlfriend and just like, boom, back in, like nothing had changed. That was the thing that was the most like perplexing, I guess, is that after a whole year of sobriety, watching one more time, it was as if nothing had happened. It was as if I had never gone a year, and the addiction and the compulsive habit was there just as strong, if not stronger, because there's the added shame of like, oh, now I messed up after a year. And, there's this fear too, all along the way that like, oh, I don't know if I can ever stop. Like I could not imagine my life without pornography. I was so afraid to even picture going more than a month or 2 months. And, as a 16, 17-year-old, I remember thinking like the only actual way I could be sure that I would never use porn again would be to dismember myself, cut off the offending body part, so that I could never use porn again. And, other sad thoughts that a lot of kids think. That's something a lot of men have considered, or, that's a thought that has crossed a lot of minds out there. And back to, after my mission, I'm about 23, 24, something like that. And I'm just in it all the way. And I kept trying, but I really, like on this side of things, like I realized that I kind of made zero progress that whole time from like age 11, 10, 11, getting really into pornography, all the way to like age 24, 25. Like I wasn't even changing. I was just abstaining and then giving up, abstaining and giving up in a repeat cycle. And today I'm free from porn. I'm totally free from it, which I'm so grateful for. And the journey's been intense and it's been awesome and beautiful. And so I wanted to talk about like when things changed. And obviously there's a lot to go into. I will get into more of the principles in other episodes, but there is a moment that to me feels like the beginning of everything changing. I remember I was living in Utah at the time. I had met a couple friends that were like had been through a lot and had healed a lot emotionally. And they started to talk to me about just like emotional stuff. And I remember this specific realization, along with, conversations from friends and things. I had this specific realization that was like, wait, emotions are not bad. And the way the phrase came to my mind was that emotions are eternal, as in like, I'm going to have emotions for as long as I exist, which I think is eternally. And from my perspective, God also has emotions. And like, I knew that, obviously it's so obvious, but it just clicked for me that like, wait a second, I spend like every day running from my emotions, trying not to feel angry or frustrated or stressed, because then I might look at porn, or, then I might not be a good friend, or I might not be able to serve well at church, or I'll be awkward in a group of people. And so I would avoid emotions all day long. And this moment was like, wait a second, I need to probably figure out how to deal with my emotions, because they're not going away. No matter how hard I try to cut them off, like they are here to stay. Like I will be feeling something probably forever. So I want to figure out how to like feel good and feel healthy. And so from there, I just started on this journey of like, it's time to ask questions. Like it is seriously time to ask new questions, because something is going on in my life. I started to ask like, what's beneath or why do I feel this emotion so much? Or I notice in certain groups, I'd feel a certain sensation or a certain way. Or sometimes I feel super insecure and I sound like an idiot and I hate myself and I beat myself up. And then other times I'm like so confident and I feel funny and people appreciate me and I feel connected. So like, why is it happening so differently? What's beneath it? And so at this point I got introduced to like some of the Eastern philosophy, the way that they think over on the other side of the world, where Western medicine and Western philosophy is super like, oh, you got a stomach ache, here's a pill to fix it. And we all know deep down, like it doesn't fix it, it does take away the symptom. And so what Eastern medicine and Eastern philosophy does is everything you're experiencing is not the root, it's the symptom of what's beneath it. I always picture like a tree in my mind, and you've got stuff in the branches. We notice stuff in the branches all day. My stomach hurts, my back hurts, I'm anxious. That's all branch stuff. I'm dealing with a pornography habit, or I'm feeling tempted to use porn. That's like in the branches. And you can chop the branches off, or you can try to pop a pill, but the branches are going to grow back every time. And so what Eastern medicine is all about, Eastern philosophy is about getting down to the roots and asking, what is beneath this? What's beneath my back pain, my depression, my anxiety, my pornography habit? What's beneath the fact that I feel uncomfortable in groups? Instead of seeing the symptom as the problem, we start to ask questions. And I mean, there are a lot of foundational principles that have helped me get free from porn, but this, I believe, is like the most basic. The first one to practice is asking questions. If you're not getting answers, like if you're struggling with pornography or any type of struggle, if you're not making progress or getting answers, I believe it's because you're not asking the right questions. There is always an answer to be received, or there is always more truth trying to come in to our lives. And I think that God and the entire universe is actually built to bring us truth. But if you're not receiving truth, or if you're not noticing like growth and truth coming into your life, I believe it's because you need to change your questions, or you haven't yet asked the right questions. And so I started just asking questions, and I'd say that one of my favorite questions that just like made my whole spirit kind of buzz, or I just felt like on fire when I started asking this. I'd say, wait, what's really going on? And I'd almost like say it 10 times, like, no, but what's really going on? Come on, like, what's for real? What is actually going on here? And I started to notice things that I actually had a lot of sensitivity, emotionally, spiritually. I was very sensitive to other people's emotions and their feelings and thoughts, and sensitive to like, what's the vibe in the room when I get to a group party? Like, whoa, it feels super different in here. All of a sudden I feel different. And I would almost like lose myself to the feeling in the room, or I'd lose myself to what other people were feeling, because I had some pretty poor boundaries. And so I got to start asking, what's going on beneath this, or what's actually going on? And, everyone's going to find their own answers here. And I have some cool principles that I'll share at another time, but ultimately it's about you practicing that process. And that's what helped me get free, is I practiced that process of asking new questions and getting new answers. And when I got stuck, it was like, cool. Yeah, there's this old tendency to like punish myself and beat the crap out of myself and curse all day long in my head at myself. But I started to replace all that stuff, all that anger, or, replace all those patterns of like, oh, I'm not supposed to feel this way. I'd replace that with, why do I feel this way? And some really incredible answers started to come. I started journaling and just noticing like, oh, it seems like there's a question I can ask like every day. And there's an answer I can receive like every day or multiple times a day. And I started to notice that things that were on my mind, if I listened and if I had the right questions in my heart, I would notice that friends would start to bring me the answers without me telling them what I was thinking about. I'd have a friend or a new acquaintance pop up and say like, yeah, I've been thinking about this. I've been worried about this question or this thought. And it would give me the next stepping stone to move forward. It's a pretty cool journey, man. That's, for me, once I started doing that, the journey started to become beautiful. And there was still huge trials. It wasn't like, overnight I was like cured from my porn habit. But I did start to heal the way I was living. I started to like enjoy the process and enjoy the journey. It's just magical. And that, if there's like maybe one thing at this exact moment, I guess, in this podcast, I would say if there's one thing I could share with like the whole world, would be to just trust that there are answers to be received. Please ask new questions, or, ask questions. Start that process of trusting that you can figure out what's down in the roots beneath the things you're experiencing, beneath your struggles. And one of the coolest things I started to find, over the next couple of years, it was a long journey for me. I started to find that beneath my porn habit that I saw as all darkness, like this is my biggest issue, this is evidence that I'm broken. Beneath all that darkness, I found that there were hidden gifts, spiritual gifts and strengths that I had been hiding or running from, or that I didn't yet know how to use. And that is one of the things that brought me the most joy, to realize I'm not just like, I used to see it as like I'm like a kid, or I'm a person with this huge broken piece of me. This is my biggest struggle. But I didn't ever consider that pornography had an actual relationship with my strengths. This weakness was an opposite to my strengths. As an example, like I said, I'm a very sensitive person, not a little bit, like a ton of sensitivity. I remember being so young, even like 6 or 7, and seeing my uncle and being able to feel and sense what he was feeling. And I knew how to react to him to make him think I was good. Like I could feel his expectations. I was sensitive to his expectation. And I remember being younger than that too, and having like a young friend who had gone through a lot, and his dad had left him and his mom. And no one ever told me more than that. I just knew about it, and I could feel his pain. I could feel the hurt that was going on in his life. And so I started that gift. I didn't fully understand how to use it. And what I started to do is almost like make myself responsible for everything I could feel. So, if someone in the room, I meet someone new and they feel sad, or it seems like they're insecure, I'd take it. Like, oh, I'll carry this for you. Or almost like it was my fault or my job to save them. If someone had been abused, I'd like take it. If someone had, depression or whatever it was, if someone didn't believe in themselves, I would almost like, here, I'll fix it. I'll be the hero. And it turned into this big savior complex where I'm using my sensitivity, my gifts of sensitivity, to take everyone else's stuff on me. And then what would happen is I'd get so overwhelmed by the misuse of that sensitivity that porn felt just like the only way to get out of it. Like I feel so dark. I feel all these emotions I don't understand because they're other people's emotions. And then I would escape from what I was doing by going to pornography. And by the way, I would also use other things to escape. Tons of video games, tons of Netflix, eating unhealthy food, lots of blaming other people, just trying to like distract from what I was feeling instead of taking accountability for it. And anyway, back to this idea that like it became so joyful to realize I have gifts. God has given me gifts. I've developed gifts. I started to connect with this idea that God doesn't just sprinkle out spiritual gifts randomly when you're born, but that maybe these are part of what I had developed and desired before this life. Like, if we've been around for eternity, we've existed for eternity, I've spent time before this life, or I've spent effort before this life to develop gifts of sensitivity and whatever other spiritual gifts I've got. And as I started to see myself that way, like things really started to come alive. And I would, instead of like using porn every day or, 2-3 times a week, it started to really spread out where it wasn't as often that I was feeling tempted. And I still struggled, but what I started to understand is that every time temptation popped up, it was an opportunity to ask questions. Oh, like what's beneath this? This temptation isn't the problem, it's the symptom, right? Back to that Eastern medicine, Eastern philosophy approach. This temptation or the urge to use porn is not the problem. It's just a result of something beneath it. Can I find the right question? And sometimes the right question is, what's the right question, And you can ask questions in meditation, ponder them in your heart. I really believe in the idea of prayer and going to a higher power and saying, can you give me a question? Do you have a question for me to ask that could help me find an answer? There will be stepping stones to find the right questions and find the right answers. My goal today is really to help you see the possibility, because so many people think they can never change or never get free. And again, just to emphasize, like, it is not about abstaining. It's not just about abstaining. So many times we just think like, oh, I'm struggling with porn. First thing to do is start counting the days I can go without it. That leaves the root stuff. All the stuff beneath your porn habit is still there. And, it's like a weed. It's going to grow back forever until you get the roots out. Unfortunately, a lot of bishops too, like, or at least the things that a kid remembers about a bishop's visit is like, oh, I need to go 2 weeks without porn before I can do this, or before I feel good, or we're going to talk again. I need to go 1 month without porn. And that becomes the focus, as if that would heal something. But dude, that's not changing anything. That is literally, it's like tie yourself up in a straitjacket and get yourself a blindfold and then call it healing. Pretending like if you do that for a month, you're going to heal from porn. That's not how it works. There are reasons that you're using porn. If you're using porn, there is part of you that wants it. There is some space for porn in your life because you're using it for something, to run away from something or to cope with something, to try to resolve fears that you haven't figured out yet. That's the big thing is, I would say, if you're using porn, there is a reason. And the reason is not because you're broken. It's so tempting to think that when you're struggling, to say it's because I'm broken. But I promise you there is a deeper reason. There is something beneath your porn habit, and this is like your formal invitation to start looking for it. And, it might be 10 things or 52 things. There's going to be, it's a puzzle, but trust that you can figure it out. And please trust me that the reason is not that you're broken. I know I said that several times, but it is not because you're broken. It is not because you're bad. There's an incredible verse of scripture in the book of Abraham 3:22 and 23. And I'm not going to quote it exactly, but it's talking about before this life and even before we were like spiritually created. We're in this form called intelligences, right? It's like one of the most basic forms of creation, I guess. I'm not going to pretend to know everything, but the scripture says that God saw these souls and he saw that they were good. Like, God saw these souls and that they were good. And so I would invite you to see yourself that way, that you're not broken trying to become better, but that you are good and you have been good since you existed. And that you are simply on a journey of trying to figure out a weakness and how to turn that into a strength. You are good. If you can't feel it, please hop on a phone call with me. I'll help you find it, or do some self-exploration. It's not my job to find that for you, but I'd love to support you in helping you discover your goodness and to help you believe that it is there. I will give more details about my story later, but I am, walking, breathing evidence that you can get free, and not just abstain from porn, but actually feel free from the desire. I have felt like full freedom from pornography, even I call it immunity. This feeling of I see something on social media that's triggering, or usually would be a big trigger. And it's no, obviously I can tell that's a beautiful person and I can tell they're trying to be sexy. And I'm also more comfortable with the idea of just scrolling on. It actually feels exhausting to me now to turn to porn. It feels just like it would be so draining and I'd have to break through and push through my boundaries. And, it's okay that you're not in that space right now. I'm not saying that you're supposed to be there right now. I'm saying if you feel the desire for porn, there is some reason beneath it and that you can figure it out. This podcast is going to provide a lot of meaningful ways to approach that and to discover what's down beneath your porn habit. And if you feel like you want some customized support, I would invite you to get on a call with me. I do a free short coaching call for anybody in the world that's dealing with porn. I'm here to support you. It's not a sales call. It's not, I'm running a business, but the purpose is not to get you into my coaching program. It is honestly because I want to help you have a breakthrough, find some connection to your goodness and to the gifts that are innately in you. And then if you want more support from me, sweet, let's talk about it. I've got group programs and, Facebook group and private coaching. I'm on a mission to help people get free from porn so they can create the life that they actually desire. I help people create personal power. I help people step into their selves, right? To bring their whole selves to their relationships, to step confidently into life and to love themselves and to love the journey. As you do those things and as you practice those things, the desire for porn naturally melts away. And it's not like a trick. It's not a thinking tactic. I believe that as we tap into truth, it brings power, and that power leads to freedom, and the desire for porn melts away. When you feel more powerful than the false power that porn offers you, you won't have any desire to step down into pornography. That's the beauty of enjoying the journey, of seeing things in this kind of this Eastern philosophy that there's something beneath it. It's not about the porn. And yeah, porn is a hurtful thing. And like for any spouses listening, if your spouse, if you're someone whose spouse struggles with pornography, I'm not suggesting that you shouldn't be offended by it. You get to feel whatever you feel. And like, I want to support you there. And there are people waiting to support you there. But for the person who struggles, for the person themselves, the person that struggles with pornography, the more you can remind yourself that it is not about porn, the faster you will heal. The more you can remind yourself like that this is a symptom, there's something beneath it, that is going to accelerate your healing. So I would invite you to see yourself that way. Please, just another reminder, like practice seeing yourself as good and seeing yourself as someone that can grow and learn and receive truth and ask questions and receive answers. I hope that this portion of my story has been inspiring to you, and there's going to be more later. Please feel free to ask questions. Leave me a review. And I'll clarify right now, like leaving a review doesn't necessarily mean that you struggle with porn, right? Listening to this podcast doesn't mean you struggle with porn. This podcast is going to include a ton of other things that are separate from pornography. That just so happens to be one of the things that's a big part of my journey and something I focus on quite a bit. But we're going to talk about amazing things in this podcast, so stick around, come back for the next one, share it, whatever you want to do. I just thank you for being here and for experiencing whatever you experienced while you listened. Have a beautiful day, and we'll see you next time.